Hi, I'm Katie, and this is episode 98 of Ornamentations. And the theme of this episode is color. That would be color decisions, color changes, and color subtleties as they are playing out on my current projects. Today, I have a finish, a start, and lots of progress on my larger ongoing whips, as well as just a touch of haul and the giveaway winners from the last episode. We'll get started with my current sampler whip, and that's Eliza Townsend by Cross Stitch Antiques. Oh Sweet Humility. I don't have as much progress to show you as I would have hoped because, quite frankly, I've got decision fatigue at this point, but let's take a look at where I am. This is an original silk conversion on Legacy Linen 45 count jersey cream. I'm using Soie Surfine. For those of you who may not be familiar with this project, and I'm sorry I did not take the time to iron anything today. It's been a really busy few weeks around here, so there are lines in the middle of the fabric, but you can see the really beautiful rich colors taking shape. So when last we saw this, I was working on those flowers, all of which have most of their fillers except for the center. And then I've been going back and forth on the blue, and I couldn't, as I said, I've got decision fatigue, so I just hopped over here to the corner and started outlining some flowers. I have not given this a ton of time since I saw you last. So blue. I came to the decision, and I think I said this last time, that this piece did need a little blue, and so I had some selected. This is my Katie folio from Lou and Sue. This was a limited edition that is no longer available. It's beautiful William Morris fabric for this. Ooh, look at that against my sweater. That is pretty. And so those are limited editions. Make sure you're signed up for Susan Stanley's newsletter if you would like your very own folio in the next colorway that comes out. So what I had pulled for this were two very, very light gray blues. Still, I think a possibility. It just wouldn't add much pop or really essentially leaven the pink, red, green that's going on here, and I think they could use a little of that just because of that intense concentration of color up in the corners. And then I had what I thought was going to be what I wanted to use, which were some nice blues that are still in the lighter spectrum, but have a little more saturation, a little more color to them. And I tested both of these. They look lovely on the spool, but that's one of them right there. And oh, it's insipid against all that rich color. And that's one of those things where you look at that afterwards and go, haha, yeah, of course, obviously, but wasn't obvious to me at the time, or I wouldn't have wasted my time with those. So I did a little stitching with those. I could see pretty quickly that that definitely wasn't what was called for here. And I left just a touch in so that I could show you, because honestly, I think showing does considerably more than telling. I mean, can you just, is that twinging you as much as it's twinging me? It's just, it's not singing from the same hymnal at all. So I have pulled a couple of blues, although I haven't had a chance to test them with, which much more color and saturation. And that, I think, is what's called for here. So either more of a true blue or one with a little more green in it would be this bottom guy. I'm kind of thinking right here. But that does need testing. I need to take both ends of the spectrum, do a little stitching with them, and see how they play with the other colors. And I just honestly have not had the stomach for it, because creatively my attention has really been taken up by my sweet bag, which we will look at later in the episode. So I continued just some of the fill-in work with the flowers. Again, as I said, started the outline here and mostly have had this put away in a pet. But you can see how spectacular it's going to be when I do make those decisions, when I do find the way forward. So I'm not abandoning this, it's just kind of not getting my full attention until I have more attention to give to it. Back, as we've seen before, no carries, not even on the letters, because I'm psycho, but it's gonna be great. I just need to get in the headspace to make some decisions with this. So that's Eliza Townsend's work, and I do hope to have more progress to show you next time, because I think I have wrestled with a lot of the outstanding questions on my sweet bag, but we'll reach that in a minute. Speaking of samplers, Britomart sampler charts still available for purchase at your local LNS. A list of the stores that have the chart in stock is in the description. 44 pages, full color. I am working on restocking kits and kit with class on my own website. You can sign up for the notification on the shop listing, and that will also be linked in the description. However, I was working on the class and there's a correction to the chart. A link to the corrections page is also in the description. You can get there from my website on the main header navigation. There is a Britomart sampler on the top of the website. If you click that and then scroll down, there's also a link to the corrections page, so you can find it that way. But basically the correction is this. Band 1, second layer, page 9 of the chart. There's supposed to be satin stitching there. That's just one of those errors that is so glaringly obvious once you see it, that you're sitting there going, oh my God, you know, I had 3 readers on this chart. I proofed it myself more times than I can count. And somehow I missed that the chart did not reflect what's going on there. Thankfully, that's an error that if you're stitching this yourself already, I know a few of you have started, you've gotten that far, you can quite easily go back in and fill in the missing satin stitch if you followed the chart and followed my dumb charting error. So, oh well. So the way I discovered this actually is that I have the chart out as I am working through the class. I'm referring back to everything, making sure that it matches up, and then I'm sitting there going, why is that empty? Those of you who have watched my channel for a long time know that I am a psycho perfectionist, so but corrections page up on the website, and then more kits for the Britomart sampler will absolutely be coming. For those of you who missed the first round of kits, please do not worry, you haven't missed anything. So that's my update on the Britomart sampler. My update is I'm an idiot, but barring that, I'm still very proud of the chart, and I'm very excited for you guys to get to stitch from it and experience what the layers can do for you. If you're interested in details on the Britomart sampler and on the specifics of the chart, I'm going to link in the description to the video where I talk about all of that. I will not bore you all with it again. So more current stitching, and that is my June 12 by 12. So Karen and Fox and Rabbit, Michelle, Mama Loves You GB, and I are doing a 12 by 12, one Christmas ornament for every month. I got caught up last month, and I am thrilled to report that I have already finished my June ornament, which is another version of the 2016 Prairie Schooler Santa. So I'm doing these in brighter colors, following what Lori Holt did with her Prairie Schooler Santas in her last Christmas Flosstube. And oh, this guy is cute. He's very, very similar to the last one. We'll take a look at that in just a minute. The only thing I changed on here is that I used different cut beads for the decoration on his beard. I just went for a white luster cut as opposed to something contrasting. I did the fuzzy stuff. I gave him little 15-0 black round seed beads for his eyes to pop that out a little in lieu of other decorations. And then I did change the brown on the reindeer. That'll be listed in the description, the full conversion. But let's take a look at color and how it changes. Oh, and I used a different braid for the hanger, which is gonna be hard to see, but this is it. Oh, I love this color. I'll put the details on this in the description. But oh, that's so perfect. I love it because it's indeterminate. It's gold, it's green, it's iridescent, it's, I don't know, it's just everything. I love the Soie metallic braids. I used to use Kreinik for everything. I knew about Kreinik from when I did needlepoint, but since I discovered the Soie braids, I have not gone back. But, sorry, sidebar. I said we were gonna talk about color. Let's talk about color. So, this all started with my second version of Cinder Claws. This is on the 45 count equivalent of what my Prairie Schooler is on. The red's the same, but this guy, the red still looks pinker to me than it does on my other versions of this, and that I think is due to the colors around him as well as the sparser coverage. So this is Soie Surfine, and then I'll link to the conversion on this guy in the episode description. And this is a little more of the effect I was hoping to achieve. In my first version of this, I used the new Legacy Linen 40 count Coastal Haze, which is a beautiful, just touch of gray linen. I absolutely love it. And you can see, I think, that those are the same color, but the much warmer, richer tones of this linen just give it a different cast. So I thought next version would be put it on the 38 count equivalent, which is Fuller's Teasel, and then see how they go. However, they are actually different threads, same color, but different thicknesses. So Surfine is thinner than its 103 equivalent, even though the colors are the same. And again, these guys do have totally different characters to them, and it's really because of the ground linen, but that pinky red isn't quite showing up the way that I thought it would. But let's focus in on the Prairie Schooler Santas and see how they stack up to each other. I actually, sorry, it's not one of my floss tubes until I drop something, right? At least we got it out of the way early. I'm a little surprised. I thought after stitching the Coastal Haze version that Fuller's Teasel would be my favorite because I liked what that warmer ground brought out so much in the red on Cinder Claws. But, you know, this is a different design. You have a different concentration of color, different colors around it, and so that ground does make a shift, just not the shift that I kind of wanted to see. And the other thing is that my greens here are different. My surrounding colors are different. Here, the red is really kind of left alone to be the star. Here you have more concentration of stitching. You've got a brighter, more intense green to set it off. You've got all of that brown. And so just the different concentration of colors alone makes it appear different. But if we get back to the two, as I said, I thought Fuller's Teasel version would be my favorite, but it's actually Coastal Haze. Now that I see them side by side, this just has such an essential brightness to it, and that's brought by the linen. The red still isn't showing the way that I had hoped, but the overall brighter effect given by that linen still manages to get closer to what I was trying to achieve here. This is still leaning more classic Prairie Schooler, even though the colors are lighter and brighter. So the conversion is exactly the same between both of these with only one change. And That's the brown that was used for the reindeer, and on this guy I did omit that detailing in the front. I didn't really think he needed it. And I did have to change the brown just because of how it was going to appear on the different ground. These are the two together. I used this 103 on Coastal Haze and then this on Fuller's Teasel. This is the Gobelins 634. And the difference between the conversions will be noted in the description. And then the only other difference is in the beads. I used a light gray to accent the beard on Coastal Haze. That just seemed fitting. And then, as I said, the luster white on this guy. I think they're both great, but I love color because it always has the ability to surprise. I'm not shocked by anything that's happened here, but it does have a slightly different cast than I was expecting. And again, that's why I love color. It will always vary by application, by what's around it, by density of use. And so the slight differences in shade and cast and hue are what make color such an endlessly fascinating journey. The other thing I would note is just check out how much those just little seed beads, non-expensive, that's a size 15 black Miyuki seed bead, easy to find, not expensive at all, just make his face pop that little much more. So hopefully some food for thought. I do still want to keep playing with these ideas of brighter, more vibrant interpretations of Prairie Schooler Santas. I would like to try a nice, vivid Gobelins. However, 2 in a row of the same guy means I will return to that for my August 12 by 12. I have something else planned for, and then this 689 is what I've been using. Okay, see, this is what I'm talking about, that in isolation, I think you're seeing that really pinky characteristic of the red that shows up so much on Cinder Claws, and its Surfine equivalent to 689. And then just because of the balance of colors, the thickness of the thread on the 103 version, you're seeing something quite different, or at least I'm seeing something quite different. I'm not sure if I'm explaining this very well. Color can be very difficult to characterize and describe accurately. That is one of the great things about video, though, is that you can show, not just tell. And so hopefully the video is making sense if my words are not. And then, as I do get asked about this quite frequently, yes, I have overstitched on the beards. That's with a rainbow gallery thread called Fuzzy Stuff. I have a tutorial on it. It's linked in the description, all details there. It's just a really great, fun way to add some jazz to Prairie Schooler Santas. I left off further embellishment because I didn't think either of these needed it. The size, fluff, and sparkle of that beard becomes the focus on both of these. So I just kind of let it be. Am I finally learning restraint in middle age or something? It's a little disturbing. But let's get back to 12 by 12 because, as I think I mentioned, I started my July because this is going to be a little bigger of a stitch, and having gotten June out of the way in a timely fashion and finally being caught up, I'm trying to keep the ball rolling here. And also, these are just fun. These are a way for me to turn my brain off and just enjoy stitching, and then leave the difficult decisions on color, say like Eliza Townsend, for another day. So this is something that I'm really enjoying right now. And my July 12 by 12 is going to be a piece I've already stitched, different version of it though. Seeing a theme here? And that's the exclusive from last year's Ginger Ball, the Stacy Nash Gingerbread House Sewing Book. So if you were watching my channel this past winter, you saw my full-size version of this. And if you're new to my channel and you haven't seen this before, I'm gonna link everything in the description so you can go back and get all the fun, jazzy stuff, especially those bugle beads, which I think really just light this up in a big way. And to those of you who have asked, no, I haven't done anything about finishing the interior. That's going to be a job for this winter once I really get into holiday stitching in earnest. This is my full-size version. This is on Legacy Linen 37 count smoke signal. And I looked at this and I thought, you know, on 37 count, that's not that far off ornament size. I would actually, you know, put this on a tree, but I thought, you know, why not make a dedicated ornament version? And so for that, I wanted to try out another idea and go down to 45 count in a different color, because I knew exactly what I wanted for that, and that was the beautiful Legacy Linen color Nightingale. So this is my July 12 by 12. I'm starting it early because theoretically I do want to do front and back. It won't open. I'll just sandwich them together, put an ornament hanger on the top, add some jazzy edging, hang it on the tree. But that's slightly richer, and it's also much more purple. This is more brown with a little bit of gray in it, smoke signal, 37 count, whereas Nightingale and its 38 count equivalent filbert are very interesting color. Here you're really seeing the purple content, but it changes a lot in different lights. Sometimes you see more brown, sometimes you see more gray, and in the light we've got here today, you're really seeing that elusive purpley quality to it. Because it's got more color in it, although my choices so far are pretty close on color, they're showing up quite differently, especially the bijou, which we'll talk about in a minute. As this is 45 count, it is smaller. As you can see, I think it's going to be a large ornament, but really, really nice on the tree. And I am mostly using Soie Surfine on the 45 count, except for the bijou. This is a discontinued color. Oh, okay, and it is showing up really well. You're not seeing the sparkle. It is so dazzling in person, let me tell you. But that slightly darker ground means that the bijou really, really pops, and so I've used it more extensively. On my first version, I just had the scallop detailing, and then I did the windows and the outline in white Gobelins. I started this with the scallop detailing just to see how the bijou was gonna play on the Nightingale, and I liked it so much that I decided to do the miserable thing and go whole hog. The outline, the windows, and all that detailing. I kind of hate myself, but I know I'm going to love it when it's on my tree. And why do I hate it? That's because bijou is a little thick for 45 count, in my opinion. But where it really starts to sink, I mean, you can see, or you can if it focuses, that those stitches just aren't quite as neat as the ones in Surfine. They're just not sitting as nicely in the weave, and you also have to use a bigger needle to use it. So bijou can go into 45 count just fine, and I'm using a discontinued color called Gold Dust. It's a light pale gold with just a little silver in it on the spool, and used in most applications, but it does turn quite strongly silver on that purpley brown Nightingale. Again, one of the subtleties of color is that it changes depending on what you put it on and what you put it with. It's always mutable, and that is what I find so endlessly fascinating. So that's a gold when you're looking at it on the spool, but put it on the right color and it turns quite silver indeed. The rest of my colors so far in this conversion is a work in progress are quite similar, so we're going to be seeing how this changes, mostly due to the effect of the linen. Back to the bijou, because I keep forgetting what I want to say about this, which is that I've got two needles working on this project. I am using a John James number 12 short tapestry point beading needle for the Soie Surfine, which is what I usually use on 45 count, and I am so spoiled by that finer needle, because what I am using for the bijou, which is a number 10 short tapestry point beading needle, is still quite a fine needle, and the 10 is the one with the bijou coming out of it. So you need that thicker needle to protect the thread and keep it from stripping. And as I said, it's still quite a fine needle. This is the 12. But that difference in the point. Oh boy, I am so used to using this super fine needle on 45 count and having it just effortlessly find all those holes in the weave, that this feels like jabbing a railroad spike through the linen. It doesn't damage it, it doesn't do anything terrible to it. It's just, I feel like I'm fighting the weave at every turn, and it makes the stitching not as much fun as I would like when it comes to the bijou. Loving the Surfine, of course, but if the effect weren't so good, and honestly when I'm stitching on this and I'm picturing it on my tree, I'm thinking, yes, it's worth the headache, but did say that's discontinued. In the old conversion for the 37 count version, I did have a suggested substitute, which was an accentuate paired with the Surfine. I would not jam that into 45 count. So if you want to do it on 45 count, I would recommend just switching to the silk of your choice. Or if you do want to do that sparkle, and why wouldn't you? It's glorious. I would just suggest making a slightly larger ornament or sewing book and going for the Surfine accentuate pairing or the bijou if you can find it. Some people were the first time around when I did this. And, oh, threads. One thing, unfortunately, that I'm not going to be able to do on this is the bugles and the garlands. This was such a feature of my first version that I am really reluctant to abandon it. However, I can tell just from looking at my stitching so far that they're going to be too big for this. So I am going to have to find other ways to jazz this up. But you know what? That's just a challenge to my creativity. I welcome it. And as I said, so far the conversion, which I will post, but it is at the moment only 4 colors. And then I'll link to the old one, which is of course complete, has one really cool thing about it, which is that 103 and Surfine are fashion lines. A lot of the colors are commissioned by Hermes, and then we just get the use of them as stitchers. And so sometimes colors will come along in the line that are just unapologetically fashion colors, and I've used one of them here because honestly, if you can't have fun with your Christmas stitching, where can you have this? And this is the glorious 2619, also known as 619 and 103, which is a screamer pink. Oh my God, it's neon, it's shocking, I love it. You know that this is lined many a Birkin for Hermes, but in my world, it goes on the Christmas ornaments. So, however, given the really purple content of the ground linen I've got here, it's not really showing up as hot pink as it does on the spool. You could get an equally hot pink effect with this just by using it on a different ground, and quite frankly I think I'm going to, because this color brings me so much joy just looking at it in the spool, rocking it in the case. I love it. So something I have to figure out another thing to do with my Christmas ornaments, but it's being toned down here by all of that red and blue in ground fabric. So again, the mutability of color. However, tonally, colors looking quite similar to my other version. Windows almost identical. This is Gobelins, that's Surfine. They are different colors, but showing quite similar. So we'll see how these two versions evolve next to each other. And then I'm hoping next time I will have a complete conversion for you. I hope to have the front done at that point, and then we'll see if I can actually bring myself to do the full back. Realistically, you're only ever going to see the front when it's hanging on the tree, but I do kind of like the idea of going whole hog both times and having a complete front and back. It's really going to depend on how much I decide I hate jamming bijou into 45 count. Definitely doesn't come naturally to me. I don't love it as much as the surfine, but I absolutely, definitely, truly love the effect. I mean, when I'm stitching on it, especially in the evening, I'm just seeing it glitter in my hands. I'm picturing it on the tree. I'm like, okay, yeah, you have to keep going here. It's going to be so worth it, that moment when you hang this gem on the tree. So that brings me to my haul, because also things that I want to hang on the tree. And these are not new. I just didn't have them before, because if you've been a long time viewer of my channel, you know how I am about block stitching. I don't love it, and therefore I have largely resisted the charm of the animal crackers. However, in contemplating Christmas stitching, I gave in and purchased Paisley and Whitaker from Stacy Nash's Etsy shop. These are the PDF downloads. You can get paper charts by calling the LNS of your choice. And so one of these I would like to stitch full size and finish as an animal cracker. I think that's going to be Whitaker, but he's not going to get brown pants. I think he's going to get red pants and like a green scarf or something. And Gobelins for all that white stitching. It's going to look great. And then I'm going to give him some beads, and we're going to do the Jazzy Katie version of an animal cracker. And then Paisley, I would actually like to do a Christmas ornament. So I think I am going to stitch this on 48 count, again using surfine, make her small, and hang her on the tree. How excellent is that? So book this for the 12 by 12, and then I think I'll probably start Whitaker as part of Christmas in July. I'm not doing a Christmas in July kit this year just because life's really busy with the Britomart sampler, with preparations for summer school upcoming. But I am going to be making a big thing of Christmas in July on my channel, so we'll have some great Christmas in July stitches, and I'll be sharing those conversions, and you can follow along if you would like to, or you can just watch me enjoy myself hugely with Christmas stitching up the wazoo. And then that brings me, that's actually the end of my cross stitching, but you want to stay tuned because we are going to look at my sweet bag. Okay, apologies if you hear something that sounds like an angry animal. I got up to get my sweet bag and my stomach is just like unleashed. Really wants lunch, hated breakfast, I'm not really sure, but like it's pissed off. So sorry about the growling, but let's talk about my sweet bag because I'm really, really excited about this. And I would note just before I hold this up that I do have some things in here that I am definitely going to take out, and I left them in because critique is such an important part of the process. Thinking and looking at something that's wrong and thinking about why it's wrong and why it's not working can often point you to the right answer to what will work. So I will often leave things that I know are just all the way not good on the project as I think about, okay, well, how do I correct that? What is going to be right for this project? So part of what's on here is going to get frogged. But I've got stems on this piece. I'm thrilled, so thrilled. And oh, the color is actually showing up pretty true, which I wasn't sure about. Okay, there it's looking dark. This is Gilt Silk Twist, and the color has proven to be a little elusive and a little mutable. So that top section, okay, and now it's truly going dark. Not what it looks like in life. Is closer to what I am getting at. And then if we flip around and look at the back, we're looking at the start of what was my original idea and which has turned out to be a complete and utter failure. So I'm going to insert a picture here of something that I took out. I had to be able to bring the stem up to meet the flower. And these are 3 different visual ideas, none of which are talking to each other, honestly. And I was looking at that going, man, that's pretty painful. I don't really know where to go next. However, mercifully, this is a mirrored design, so I was able to flip this over and start working my way towards what I thought I wanted to see on the front. So at that point, I put in the pearls for the centers of those flowers, and then I started working the stems, which are gilt silk twist, and that is done using a plaited braid stitch variation diagrammed by Jackie Carey and Elizabethan Stitches. If you're curious, this is plaited braid variation number 1. And that took a whole lot of angsty experimentation to get there, because for some reason I was really just dead set on asserting my personality by not using plaited braid. But it was the right choice here. But I went through all the other possible options before I finally settled on that. I tried holly braid, which is my personal favorite of the braid stitches. I'm inserting a photo here. This is holly braid worked in silk wrapped gimp. It's luscious. It's so beautiful. I adore it. However, the silk wrapped gimp was just too large for this project. The way that it was standing up off the ground, which is relatively flat with all that long and short stitch, and then that very fine gilt background, it was dominating the whole piece, and the stems aren't really meant to be a star of the show. So that had to go, even though it was luscious. I'm gonna have to keep that in mind for something else. And then holly braid stitched worked in gilt silk twist, which is what I am using here, just in a different stitch, was much too sparse. So then I went to the cherry variation of plaited braid, which is lighter, and that was still too sparse. And then I've had to just concede defeat and give in with regular plaited braid. Some of you may be asking, Katie, what is your problem with plaited braid? And it's that it's very often worked in passing. So it's what Jackie Carey has used on her own projects. And that's not a criticism of Jackie Carey, just so that we're all perfectly clear. She's going for historical accuracy. And you know what? Plaited braid in passing is usually what you find on sweetie bags. So she's quite correct in doing that. It's just I have my own concerns, and to me, artistically, that often just looks too bulky, too visually dominant. Plaited braid worked in a passing thread is something that is just better scaled to clothing, to the human body. It's one of the places you very commonly see it in Elizabethan stitches, on things like a nightcap, on jackets, the thistle threads reconstruction of the Plymouth jacket, for example. It's all plaited braid, and it's quite suitable used at larger scales. When you're using it at smaller scales in a thicker thread, I find it gets quite overwhelming, and that's why I was so dead set against plaited braid. However, scale the thread down and it becomes the right choice, because that is beautifully detailed, although not all my curves are as nice as I would like. I was really out of practice with plaited braid, I will admit that right now. Hold on, I'm trying to get you a good view of this, where the color is not so dark it's distracting. And so it's textured, it fills the space, it's not standing so far off the ground that it's hogging the eye, essentially. It's the right fit. And then for those of you who might not know, because I keep on going gilt silk twist, gilt silk twist, what is gilt silk twist? Gilt silk twist is a fabulous thread. It is the fiber love of my life. It's a silk core around which you have a very, very fine gilt wrap. So you get all the color of silk, but you get the sparkle and texture of a metal thread, which is critical for something like plaited braid, where you need a structured thread or it's just going to flop all over the place. So this is gilt silk twist in Gustard Green, which is $1.99, basically with a gold wrap on it, and perfection. That's a much truer color representation. When I turn it straight to the camera, it goes quite dark, and that's not what it looks like to the human eye when I am looking at it. So the over detailing. Let's talk about what went wrong here. This was a part of my concept from the start. This is the inspiration image I have had in my head this whole time. This is from the 18th century, it's from a dress, I think, actually. And I just love this. And at some point you're gonna see me do something with this because I still love it. But I overlooked some things that should have been quite obvious in retrospect. One, that pink is lighter, meaning there's much less contrast between the silk and the metal threads. They're not standing out quite so strongly. Two, it is on a neutral ground. You are not sticking it against a sea of gold. So as you can see, I didn't finish where I was going with that. That was the point at which I looked at that and went, oh no. Oh, no, 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 no. And as I said, I left it in because I needed to think about what was right and what was wrong. And so as I was doing all that plate of brain, which takes a hot minute, it's not the fastest stitch in the world if you're familiar with it, I was thinking about, okay, what works and what doesn't work. And what works about this piece is delicacy of the gold background, that it's sparkly and beautiful, but it's not overwhelming. And the way that it sets off the delicacy and vibrancy of all those beautiful silks and the shading. And that means you need to not overfeel the lily here. So I've got some fun touches with those pearls. And again, those aren't a great texture match because they're so big, the way they stand up off the fabric. It feels right now like they're not integrated into the design. I am gonna see if I can do a little something about that. But it's not a colossal failure in the way that the detailing is a failure. I mean, you could make that work. It would work on a piece that is different from the piece that I am making here. So what's next on this? Because getting very close. I need to frog this. We've talked about this. I've shown you it. We've talked about why it doesn't work. And so that's gots to go. But having finished all those stems, all that plaited braid stitch, it's time for the final detailing. And so that is going to take the form of some outlining on these flowers. I think probably silver, something quite fine. I've already tried some of my very fine threads and they're too fine. It needs a little something to add definition. And then I think the stitching will be done and I can get on to assembly, to adding all these fun decorative details that I've cooked up for this piece and the tassels. So if these are new to you, we looked at them in the last episode. I won't go through it all again. Braids, pretzel knots, all the fun stuff. And so since I'm not toning down that enormous tulip the way I thought I would with over detailing, the bottom tassels in the scream are pink, and then all of the braids are going to visually become even more important to give this visual balance, because this is going to be what you see. It's just going to be one half because these get sandwiched together, and that's front and back of the bag. So we're getting there. I'm hoping that by my next Flosstube this won't still be on a frame. I doubt it will be finished, like entirely FFO'd, because there's still a fair amount that goes into this. That just aside from it takes a hot minute to do all the assembly, there is a full woven edging on the piece itself, going up the sides, on the opening. It's going to take a hot minute. So still a fair amount to do, but we're getting there, and I think it will also take me a hot minute to decide on what exactly the right detailing is on these flowers. The thing about the decisions at the end of any project, it's the same thing that's happening to me on Eliza Townsend's work, by the way, is that you made all the easy decisions at the start. And now at the end, the decisions get harder because they need, whatever you add, whatever it is that you choose, it needs to work with everything else that's already here. And then it also needs to tie the project up in a bow. It needs to provide what's missing. It needs to add whatever balance or finishing touch that isn't here yet. So not only does it have to work with everything else that's on the piece already, it has to complete it. And so the final design details are usually the hardest, which is why I am telling you this is still going to take me a hot minute, even though we're looking at something that's, ooh, looks really, really close, and it is getting very close. So excited about this. However, that's most of my stitching. And then I referenced Elizabethan stitches, but the book I was using to send as a catalog to shop for all my options on the stems is Elizabethan Stitches by Jackie Carey. A lot of the braids are also in her Sweet Bag book, but to my mind, the most comprehensive single resource is Elizabethan Stitches. If you have any interest in this time period at all, this is a book that you really need to own, not just because she's so exhaustively picked apart all these different stitches that appear. There's also spectacular detailed photography of all of these pieces that she studied. There are case studies of the stitches and how they're used, their application. So there's a lot of substance in this book, but there's also a lot of eye candy. I mean, you can see how much I use it because there are almost as many marks in this book as there are pages. It's one of my go-to resources, and it's been at my side as I've sat here and tried to assert my personality through not using bladed braid. That failed, but I'm okay with the effect. Like I said, scale it to the piece by using a finer thread, and I become okay with bladed braid. That's a truer color representation. I hate, yeah, see there, it looks all dark, the stems, and that's, And then the other thing I would like to talk about is a book that I read recently. This is Ingrained by Callum Robinson. It's Robinson, The Making of a Craftsman. It's a memoir of a Scottish woodworker who runs a design studio in Scotland with his wife. And so usually when I talk about books on here, they're specifically books about textiles, embroidery, stitching. This one, however, I think would be of interest to many of you, even though it's not a book about stitching, and that's why I'm talking about it, because it's a memoir about craft, about making, about materials and our connection to the materials that we work with. And because it's just a beautifully written book, this was a legitimate page turner for me. I could not put this down. Amazing, amazing skill with words. And then also the kind of structure of the book is a crisis that his business goes through and how he pulls through that. And that's going to be a very familiar dilemma to anyone who has operated their own business. How far will you go to save what you've built, and what are the compromises that you're willing to make? And the way that he tells the story of his own growth in his craft, and of his deep connection to materials is just beautiful. And so if you're looking for a good read, I don't usually make non-textile book recommendations, but I feel really, really strongly about this, and I would like to read just an excerpt from the end. Engaging with the natural world through expressive manual labor speaks to something ancient in all of us, and it is something that might, as unlikely as it sounds, forever change your relationship with the objects around you. At its best, it's honest, useful, intellectually stimulating, and sustainable work. A rewarding and refreshingly independent vocation, providing a connection with nature and with our innate drives to learn and create. So whether or not stitching is your job probably speaks to something that you have felt about stitching, and you just, beautiful, beautiful writer who tells a wonderful story about making, about craft, and about being a craftsman. My business is called Katie Strachan Artisan Embroidery, and to me the most important word in that name is artisan, and it's not even close. Artisan, as defined by the OED, which for once failed me, this is a really prosaic definition, one who practices or cultivates an art, an artist. To me, artisan encompasses art, but also the practice of craft at a very high level of mastery of a demanding technical form. The artistic side of my work is very important to me, but the mechanics, the mastery of the materials, of technique, of craft, of form, that's actually what's far more important to me. So this book spoke to me on a very deep level, even though his chosen material is different from my own. So details will be in the description. It's a pretty quick read. I tore through it in under 24 hours and I just loved it, which is why I am recommending it to you. And with that, we are actually going to bring this episode to an end with the giveaway winners, which are the Pearl Meter Minders from Jackie Duplessis, gifted to the channel by Jackie. And our two winners are Betty Larks 8134 and Donna Boyd 5108. I've commented on both your comments. Please contact me using the form on my website with your mailing address, and I will be happy to get these out to you. So as a final reminder, kits for Flag Thief by Plum Street, which is behind me, are still available. That I think got a little swamped by the release of the Britomart sampler. Charts are in stock at L&S's, and more kits will be on the way. As I said, you can sign up in the listings on my shop. So I will see you again in 2 weeks, and for next time, what I hope to have for you is Sparkle Palooza. And until then, happy stitching.